Hello, thank you for joining Cyberator's webinar series, where you can listen, engage, and obtain actionable advice in 30 minutes from respected industry experts. Keep pace with the latest issues that impact business, IT, and security. Listen to speakers who will explore different aspects of the business by relating their own experiences. We will begin today's webinar momentarily.
Thanks for joining us for this webinar. I'm your host, Megan Trotter, and with me I have Abu Sadiq. Abu is a certified Chief Information Security Officer and has diverse industry experience in aerospace and defense, chemical, telecom, healthcare, oil and gas, and consumer goods. Good to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
In today's interconnected business landscape, organizations increasingly rely on third-party vendors to fulfill various operational needs. While partnering with vendors offers numerous advantages, it also introduces potential risks to data security, compliance, and overall business integrity. To safeguard your operations and protect sensitive information, organizations must prioritize the evaluation and management of vendors' security and compliance practices. Organizations have a real need to understand the actual risks they inherit from their vendors. These include the risks the vendor brings to you and the risks created by how you're using the vendor. Abu, you've helped several organizations set up their third-party vendor risk management program. Based on your experience, what are the best practices for integrating third-party vendor risk management into an organization's overall cybersecurity strategy?
Megan, integrating third-party vendor risk management into an organization's overall cybersecurity strategy is crucial for maintaining a robust security posture. Here are some best practices to ensure a seamless and effective integration. First, establish a comprehensive TPRM framework. Clearly outline the objectives of the TPRM program, including risk assessment, monitoring, and compliance. Ensure it aligns with the organization's overall cybersecurity strategy. Next, create detailed policies and procedures for assessing, managing, and monitoring vendor risks. These should include risk assessment criteria, approval processes, and incident response protocols. Once these are in place, incorporate risk assessment into vendor selection. Perform thorough risk assessments of potential vendors before selection. This includes evaluating their security practices, compliance with regulations, and overall risk profiles. Implement standardized tools and questionnaires to evaluate vendors consistently and efficiently. Next, continuously monitor and assess the risk levels associated with existing vendors. Schedule regular reviews and updates to account for changes in the vendor's risk profile or the organization's needs. If possible, utilize automated tools to monitor vendor activities, security controls, and compliance status in real time. Ensure that the TPRM processes are integrated with the organization's internal security policies and controls. This includes data protection, access management, and incident response. Collaborate with IT and security teams to ensure that vendor risk management is considered in all cybersecurity initiatives and that any vulnerabilities are addressed promptly. Maintain open lines of communication with vendors regarding security expectations, compliance requirements, and incident reporting. Develop internal reporting mechanisms to keep stakeholders informed about vendor risks, compliance status, and any issues that arise. I highly recommend implementing a risk-based approach. Focus on high-risk vendors and those with access to sensitive data or critical systems. Apply more stringent controls and monitoring to these high-risk vendors. Tailor the risk management practices based on the risk level associated with each vendor, ensuring that resources are allocated effectively. Regularly review and update the TPRM practices to ensure compliance with relevant regulations and industry standards. Perform periodic audits of the TPRM processes and vendor compliance to identify any gaps or areas for improvement. Organization with a large number of vendors can leverage a TPRM software to streamline vendor risk assessments, automate monitoring, and track compliance. If the TPRM tool is integrated within the GRC platform, then the organization can centralize risk management efforts and ensure alignment with overall cybersecurity strategies. Provide training for staff involved in vendor management on best practices, risk assessment techniques, and compliance requirements. Foster a culture of security awareness regarding third-party risks throughout the organization. By following these best practices, organizations can effectively integrate third-party vendor risk management into their cybersecurity strategy, ensuring a more secure and compliant environment.
How can organizations effectively assess and continuously monitor the security posture of their third-party vendors?
To effectively assess and continuously monitor the security posture of third-party vendors, organizations should adopt a structured approach. Classify vendors based on their risk level, access to sensitive data, and criticality to operations. Use questionnaires and security assessments to evaluate vendors' security controls, compliance status, and risk profiles before engagement. Leverage third-party security rating services to obtain an independent evaluation of vendors' security posture. Utilize automated tools to continuously track vendors' security status, including any changes in their security posture or compliance. Set up real-time alerts for any significant changes or vulnerabilities detected in the vendor's environment.
Can you provide some examples of common security oversights or mistakes that organizations make when dealing with third-party vendors?
Certainly. Organizations often encounter various security oversights or mistakes when managing third-party vendors. Here are some common ones. Failing to assess the risk associated with different vendors adequately. Treating all vendors the same regardless of their access to sensitive data or critical systems. Not performing thorough background checks or risk evaluations before onboarding a vendor. Relying solely on the vendor's self-assessment or assurances without conducting independent verification or validation. Assuming that a one-time security assessment is sufficient without implementing continuous monitoring to keep track of the vendor's security posture over time. Not monitoring changes in the vendor's security practices, infrastructure, or compliance status that might affect their risk profile. Not including specific security requirements, compliance obligations, or rights to audit in vendor contracts. Failing to address data protection and privacy requirements, including how data will be handled, stored, and protected by the vendor. Not establishing clear channels for vendors to report security incidents or vulnerabilities, leading to delays in addressing issues. Granting vendors more access than necessary, leading to potential security vulnerabilities. Addressing these common mistakes can help organizations better manage third-party vendor risks and enhance their overall cybersecurity posture.
What role does contractual agreements play in ensuring vendor security compliance? And what key clauses or conditions should be included in such agreements?
That is a very good question. Contractual agreements play a crucial role in ensuring vendor security compliance by clearly defining the security requirements, responsibilities, and expectations for both parties. These agreements help establish a formal framework for managing and mitigating security risks associated with third-party vendors. Here are some key clauses and conditions that should be included in such agreements. Specify the security standards and frameworks that the vendor must comply with, such as ISO 27001, NIST, or specific industry regulations, example GDPR, CPRA, etc. Outline the specific security controls and practices the vendor must implement to protect data and systems. Detail how the vendor should handle, process, and store sensitive data, including encryption requirements and data segregation. Include requirements for notifying your organization in case of a data breach or security incident, including timeframes and methods of notification. Define the level of access the vendor will have to your systems and data, ensuring it is limited to what is necessary for their role. Specify requirements for strong authentication and authorization practices, such as multi-factor authentication. Ensure you have access to the vendor's security-related records and reports to verify compliance. Reserve the right to conduct audits or assessments of the vendor's security practices and controls, either periodically or as needed. Specify that the vendor must comply with all relevant local, national, and international regulations affecting data security and privacy. Outline procedures for terminating the agreement, including how data should be returned or destroyed. If the vendor product incorporates artificial intelligence, include clauses that the vendor should adapt a principle of data minimization and ensure that the AI systems only collect data that is strictly necessary for their functionality. Avoid scraping corporate data, including messages and files, to develop new AI and ML models. Where possible, they should use data anonymization techniques to protect individual identities. This can help mitigate privacy risks and comply with regulations. By incorporating these clauses and conditions into contractual agreements, organizations can better manage vendor security risks, ensure compliance with security standards, and establish clear expectations and responsibilities for both parties.
In the context of evolving cyber, how should organizations adapt their approach to third-party vendor risk assessment and management?
Cyber threats are constantly evolving. Attackers are continually developing new techniques and tactics, leveraging advanced technologies such as AI and machine learning, and exploiting emerging vulnerabilities. Organization needs to stay on top of this and make sure their third-party partners are effectively managing and mitigating risks. Here are my recommendations. Shift from static, one-time assessments to continuous, real-time evaluations of vendor risks. Implement tools and processes that allow for ongoing monitoring and assessment. Use historical incident data and trends to anticipate potential risks and adjust your risk management strategies accordingly. Incorporate threat intelligence feeds and data analytics into vendor risk assessments. This helps in identifying emerging threats and vulnerabilities that could impact vendors. Utilize automated risk assessment and monitoring tools to streamline processes and improve accuracy. These tools can provide real-time alerts and insights into vendor security posture. Focus resources on high-risk vendors and those with access to critical data or systems. Regularly reassess risk levels based on changes in the threat landscape and vendor activities. Stay informed about new and evolving regulations related to third-party risk management and cybersecurity. Ensure that your vendor management practices comply with these regulations. By adopting these adaptive strategies, organizations can better navigate the challenges posed by evolving cyber threats and strengthen their approach to third-party vendor risk assessment and management.
Abu, thank you so much for providing your insight into this important topic.
Thank you very much for having me as a participant. I truly appreciate the opportunity to contribute and engage in such a valuable discussion.
And thank you for joining this webinar.
Hope you enjoyed today's presentation. We regularly host webinars similar to this where you can listen, engage, and obtain actionable advice in 30 minutes from respected industry experts. You can register at cyberator.net/webinar. It's free to attend. Thank you and hope to see you again soon.